All right, NYB, you're in for a treat today. Episode number 253 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's still no business like minding your own. I'm still your host, Champ Ron. We're here recording this on Saturday, March the 6th. Hope this finds you well. Hope this finds you at peace. And I hope this finds you in good spirit. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star. That helps us continue to grow the MYB community. And as always, you can check me out at champronbrooks.com. That's champronbrooks.com. Text me 312-847-4071. I'd like to send you a free gift, my free ebook, Investing in Real Estate with Little to No Money Down. So there's no BS, no bots, none of that stuff. It comes right from me. Yeah, that's right. It comes right from me. All right. So we're not playing that game. All right. Folks think, everything comes from a bot. No, not with me. It don't. All right. So yeah, it comes from me. All right. So text me 312-847-4071. I definitely appreciate that and want to get that to you expeditiously. Like they say. So listen, I'm excited. She didn't know how crazy I was NYB. So, this is not your usual kind of, podcast where we just go be all dry and tell me about 5 things you did, Now we ain't finna do that. Right. I've got Dr. R.A. Slaughter, who is a tremendous and well-respected, kind of learning advocate. As we like to say, and definitely in the multicultural space, and someone who advocates and supports for the edification of communities by leading the charge with enhancing the knowledge base of our youth, and particularly our Black and our brown youth. And, again, this is a tremendous honor for me to speak with someone like this. And I appreciate Olivia Almagro for connecting us. Make sure that you don't forget, Olivia's a great supporter of this show with O Plus Media Group, LLC. So make sure you connect with Olivia at oplusmediagroup.com. But, Dr. Slaughter, this is truly an honor to have you join me on a Saturday of all times. There's a lot of places you could be, but you're right here with us. So you might be just as crazy as I am.
You're fitting to go crazy today. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you again so much. And let's get into it. For those that aren't familiar with you, Doctor, talk about kind of your journey, right? We all have our stories, but, talk about your journey, how you got to where you are. And, I'm sure it wasn't just all rosy and, like Coming to America 2's out. So I know you didn't have the rose peddlers out in front of you everywhere you walked.
Right. So I grew up in a small little suburban town just outside of Philadelphia. You may not know how the suburbs of Philly are, but when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, the suburbs of Philadelphia were mostly white. And so I grew up in a very odd crux where on this side going north was all African-American suburban kids. And on this side of the other side of the street going south was all white kids. So oddly enough, I was literally on the border, right? And so somebody could say my side of the town was the more economically advantaged side, right, of the town. Sure. And so I went to all private schools and schools with all white people, white teachers, Catholic schools. And so unfortunately, I was not represented in the student population and the teaching population, and definitely not in the educational materials. And coming from 2 parents who were staunch advocates of education, what they let me know was that you go to these schools to get part of your education, but you get the majority of your education from home.
Absolutely.
And so Ron, I'm glad to say that in my home, and this is only because the way the homes were set up, these big homes in this like the town where the people had built the little railroad in our town, and the engineers had built these big homes, right?
Right.
And so they had libraries, right? Not family rooms. We've since changed these rooms into family rooms. But in my library, in my home, we had books by Black people stacked to the ceiling, right? So I was educated at home. I went to school really for the discipline, right?
Yes.
And so but with my mouth, right? I was always saying to the nuns, you're missing so much information. Like we're reading these books and none of them reflect me. This is a stark contrast to where I live at home every day.
Right.
Right. And so when you say there was no rose petals, there really was not any rose petals. I was in constant combat with my educators. And that's not how education is supposed to work. It's supposed to be harmonious. It was not. So I took a lot of bruises, bumps and bruises growing up, going to Catholic school from K all the way through college, undergrad, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And not seeing myself in the literature almost all of those years.
Wow. And what's incredible about that, Doctor, is during that time period, if you think about how much different the world was back then and how much more overt. I mean, I imagine even in Philadelphia, I spent a lot of time here in the South, and obviously the racial divide is pretty stark here, and I imagine it's the same throughout the country. And for your family to invest in that knowledge base of self, right? Even when that contrasted the educational system, I think that's something that's really important to point out, because there are many people that it's easy to get sucked into the educational system piece of it. And I think at that time, if I may be mistaken in saying this, a lot of Black people were straying away from that, because there was there was this divide being created in our country of kind of haves and have-nots coming out of the 70s, and once the civil rights movement kind of reached its plateau and kind of, not to say fizzled out, but kind of wasn't on the forefront of consciousness. We get out of Vietnam, all those type of periods, and then you get the advent of cable TV, the advent of the lifestyles of rich and famous, right? And then you had this Black middle class that began to spawn, right? And I think out of that middle class, you had this that there was a lessening of kind of Black culture and more of this celebration of other cultures, right? And that got maybe perpetuated in the educational system with many Black and brown kids at that time. So for your family to continue that even during that period, I think is tremendous, and probably had a profound impact on you.
It did. And again, there was a situation where I was almost invisible in the schools where I was taught, because you're telling me the history and what you're saying is factual. But in actuality, in the town where I grew up, going to school with all white people, my economic advantage was invisible, was non-existent. It was not a term in my teacher's mind to understand me as a middle-class American or in an economically advantaged state of affairs. Like in their minds, all Black people were poor, right? Disadvantaged, undereducated, right?
Heavy.
In actuality, I'm from a family of all professionals. My father owned his own printing company. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My parents were together. This is something in the 70s and 80s where Black families were fractured more so than not, right?
Facts.
And so it was disheartening to go to school and know that my parents had worked to make sure that we were good standing Americans. And then I go to school and I'm considered the first person that stole something, right? I gotta be watched.
Oh my goodness.
From 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon to make sure Rachel don't skip school, or did Rachel do her homework, and little silly things like that, where you could see the cloth from where I was cut if you just looked at my address, right? And that's not to say that people who are not economically in good standing are not educated. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm saying I want all of my identifiers to be correct and real for people to acknowledge them. And that's not how it was.
No doubt about it. And I'm curious, Doctor, as because I did mention this earlier, but obviously you're an author, a respected author, and you've got kind of the new book, Turning the Page: The Ultimate Guide for Teachers to Multicultural Literature. I want to get into that and talk about that a little bit in the spirit of your background, because I think in a parallel of that, for someone of your background to speak on multiculturalism, I think is tremendous, right? Because I think you have a great credibility there as someone that has seen holistically and been around a multitude of cultures that probably help shape your vision, right? And understanding, that, we're not, monolithic, right? Like there's depth, to us. And oftentimes, I saw this in my upbringing that, is a little different than yours, but there's some parallels there for me as well, coming up in the 80s and 90s, where, I went from, one school that, where everybody looked like me, and then I go to another school where very few look like me, and that cultural shift that took place for me, transitioning into high school.
Right.
But talk about the book and talk about the motivation for you, Doctor, to write a book about multiculturalism.
Yeah. So this book is really my life's work of again, having gone to schools with all white people.
Yeah.
And so there's something very odd that a lot of people do not know, but it's often considered the truth. White people do not feel like they have culture. Okay. So this is why this book is so important. Because when I was going to school, I went to school with Irish people, I went to school with Italian people, Greek people. Yes. I went to school with a boy named Demetrius Sparakoulis, right?
Okay.
Uzinskis. Right? So we were a microcosm of the world inside of this classroom.
Yeah.
My teachers did not take that as a nudge to find literature that represented us, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what this book is about. What I recognized from my teachers is that they had a little bit of hesitancy in choosing books with people of color or about ethnic and cultural ideas, because they themselves were lacking in education.
Yes.
I was taught by the Sisters of Sacred Heart. I was taught by IHM nuns. These are all different orders of sisters in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
You have to know, and a lot of people do not, many of those teachers were not educated in their undergraduate and graduate years. Many of them left the convent, right?
Right.
And went straight into the classroom without any education. So they did not have to be certified like you think of teachers today. They didn't have to have college degrees, right?
Right.
But oddly enough, general America thought that Catholic schools were above and beyond educationally than public schools. Not the case, right? So again, it goes back to, what was I learning in school? How was I able to be in the classroom with this kind of like cornucopia of cultures and not have my life and the lives of my fellow classmates reflected? It goes back to the teachers. So the work that's in this book, Turning the Page, is really kind of a tribute to teachers who find it difficult and a little bit scary to find and include multicultural literature in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely see that. And I think back even during my own kind of school career and the timid nature that many of the teachers had, particularly once I transitioned again to a school that wasn't quite as diverse, in its population and in its teacher population, and how when the subject did arise, as you mentioned, where an opportunity was there to be able to do that, there was a timid nature. One, because the environment was starting to become a little bit more polarized, where offending,
Yes.
people of color, right, became a little more prevalent, as well as the notion of peer pressure, right?
Yes.
So that I believe some teachers were under a fear of peer pressure that if they go down that line, that some of their contemporaries may have some unsavory things to say to them
Absolutely.
about that puts pressure on them that they're not accustomed to, right?
Right.
In the way that they go about their profession. And so that's an interesting kind of piece. As you were saying that, I went ahead and ordered my copy. That's one of the beauties of having this technology, is that I could go ahead and order my copy from Amazon. And so MYB,
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I ordered the paperback, so I look forward to getting that here soon. So MYB, make sure that you go in. The link's in the show notes. But order, Dr. Slaughter's book, Turning the Page: The Ultimate Guide for Teachers to Multicultural Literature. Go ahead and place the order so that you can read it, and then that way you can, you can reach out to Dr. Slaughter and let her know. Take a picture of it, post it on your social media,
Please.
and let her know, and tag her in that, and let her know that you read it. Don't just post the cover. Read the book. All right, actually read the book. Right. Film of y'all like them TikTok videos. TikTok yourself. Reading the book. And do that type of thing, and and show support there. And so I'm encouraging everybody to do that, and I've taken leadership by going ahead and placing my order as well. So order the book, spend the money, order the book, and support Dr. Slaughter with that. Doctor, for young people getting into multiculturalism, of course, my daughters are 11, coming up on 10. My middle daughter's coming up on 10, and my younger daughter's coming up on 9. And when I go to their school and I spend time in their classrooms and things like that, it blows me away that multiculturalism and with them today is way more advanced than you and I. They do have a kind of this melting pot of cultures within at the school that they attend. There's really a little bit of everybody in the school, and
Sure.
I think those young people have been a little bit more exposed. The world's a little bigger for them with the advent of technology and the internet. And so learning about another culture is just a Google search away, right?
Right.
Which is different than you and I. We had to go to microfilm and microfiche to try to in the library.
Right. Do you remember that? Cranking that machine out, right?
I don't want to date us too much, Doctor, but we do remember those times when we didn't have a computer in our pocket all the time, and I think as a result that's where that maturity and things like that have come on. Why is it necessary and important for young people to read and really engage in multiculturalism, and kind of read those books and materials about it?
It's important because, again, those books reflect our reality in the world today, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, however, the classroom landscape is really strangely situated. The teaching population is 87% white females, right?
Yes.
And so the likelihood that you'll ever be taught by a person of color is quite slim, especially by a male person of color. So BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, and people of color do not usually go into the teaching profession because it does not pay the kind of money that's needed to live the lifestyle that you want many times, right?
Sure.
And then 2, because the landscape is not diverse, many people of color feel uncomfortable, right? But the classroom of students is diverse.
Yes.
So what kind of dichotomy do we have between the students and the teacher? So you expect that your teacher knows more than you do, but in many cases that's not true. So I would say the reason that kids need to read multicultural literature is to continue to grow and to learn about the world and to learn about cultures, religious cultures, different sexualities in this world, right?
Right.
Different landscapes socioeconomically. There are all types of identifiers that a lot of students are not aware of,
Yes.
especially in the public school. Do you understand, I'm sure you do, how many religious sectors are represented in one classroom, right? I taught public school for many years. I'm in my 30th year of education, right? I've been a supervisor of teachers. I've been a classroom teacher. I've done everything in schools that is possible. And when I was a supervisor of teachers, many of them would say, I don't know what it means that the young lady has a scarf on her head. My dear, she practices the hijab. To have a teacher in front of you who does not understand why you're wearing a scarf on your head is a travesty of education.
To say the least.
To say the least. And that's just one example of how, in many cases, students who read multicultural literature are just that much more astute than the teacher in front of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. That is, that still blows my mind that happens even today in 2021. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. That point of Black and brown men in education. Let's go there a little bit, Doctor, if we can. And as a Black man myself, you're exactly right that even when I had interest in in teaching, right, and being able to get involved in it, I was at a point in my career where I was making roughly maybe 5 to 6 times what the average teacher salary was. Yeah, okay. And so scaling, or what I viewed that as, was having to scale back my lifestyle and my income, which was extremely difficult as I was rearing a family with my wife and my children. But I was listening to you, and my creative gears were going, and wanted to get your thoughts on this. Is there a way to help supplement teachers' income, particularly for men, right? And that multicultural piece of having more men in the classroom and in administration and things like that, to help balance out some things, and to really also help introduce the knowledge base around other cultures and things like that, I think can help as we have maybe somewhat more of a supplement on the income of teachers. And I'm thinking of this holistically, right, kind of around our country. Is there a way that, understanding the average salary, Doctor, of a teacher, but also with some of the free time that teachers do have. Now, I say that a little bit tongue in cheek because there's some teachers that's like, free time. What are you talking about? But with the advent of technology, does that open up the door for teachers, particularly Black and brown men, to get involved? Where the salary, we know the salary bucket is here, but there's things that you could do to supplement that, to maybe not get you back to your nice $150,000 a year salary you got in the private sector, but maybe get you somewhere close to where this mission side of what you do that you're really passionate about with helping youth, you could do it without feeling either guilty or having to make this big lifestyle sacrifice in your income. Is there a way to do that? It is. First, it is true that teachers have the summers off. So that's what some people think of as the free time, right? That 3 months of at the beach. So that's step one. People who are, especially African-American males, I'm speaking specifically about them now, who are looking to supplement their income, should not think of the school year as only 9 months. Yes. So there's, especially in the public school sector, the school really runs all year round. And how's that possible? One, there's summer school. There is camp, right? There's, especially now in today's world, there's online school. But before we delve into that even further, I want to go back a little bit and say, please. Many people, especially Black males, are not clear about how the salaries work in public school. Okay. Again, this is my 30th year, so there's really nothing about education I don't know. Most African-American males are not getting paid as a teacher what they're supposed to get paid.
They don't know the salary gauge, and they're not schooled on what the salary is for that particular district. Okay. A lot of African American males are not even clear that they can gain tenure in a public school. Wow. So once you teach at most districts 7 years, you gain what's called tenure, which makes it very difficult to let you go or to fire you. So many of them don't realize that they have tenure. And once you attain tenure, you take that tenure with you to the next district.
Yes.
Okay. But you can also negotiate your salary when you're offered a job. So the salary is in certain increments. And depending on your educational background, you are paid for a bachelor's degree. You get an increment for a master's degree. And obviously you get your increment for a doctoral degree. Sure. You also get increments for being a specialist, a reading specialist, a learning specialist, right? A math specialist. So all of these specialities are taught in the education system, like in your undergraduate years. You also obviously get a very healthy salary as a principal.
Sure.
Principal certifications are very difficult to attain, but financially for African American males, they're wonderful certifications to have, because as a principal, you can move like water amongst districts. And then as the cherry on top of the sundae, if you move towards becoming a superintendent, you then are at the pinnacle of salary increments, right?
Absolutely.
And I've known superintendents to retire from one district and get a job as a superintendent somewhere else.
Exactly.
So they're getting their retirement benefits from one district. They've started a whole nother job at another district. They're accruing retirement benefits from that district.
Yeah.
How many African American superintendents do you even know? Right?
Great question.
Right? But there are people today in school right now, right, who are getting their superintendent certifications because they're taking over districts, and they're raising the bar and asking for salary increments that are beyond what we think of as a person should get in education. There are some superintendents who make over $120,000. Okay. So when we think of education in the classroom as a place where it doesn't pay well, that's actually not the case. Education is a very lucrative business to go into.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it requires that vision and that that kind of knowledge of creativity of ways that, particularly like you said, to be able to kind of stair step your career, right? And that sort of thing. And then in those early kind of days where maybe the salary isn't quite as high, like you mentioned, some thoughts of, camps, there's like yourself, becoming an author. There's many things, real estate. There's many ways that people can get involved and utilize the time that they do have to help supplement their income as they work on those levels. And I think, if we can encourage more, Black and brown men, to do that. And kind of match what Black and brown women are doing and have done in education over the last, let's call it 30 or 40 years. That way, we get these various perspectives, and it really drives this multicultural kind of nature across school districts, and even in school districts where the demographic is maybe not multicultural, right? I think about some of my travels through the Midwest and where a lot of towns and cities aren't as multicultural. I go through Illinois a lot, and outside of Chicago, right? There's most of Illinois is very rural and very homogenous, right, with white people, and so I think as we start splittering a little bit, sprinkling a little bit of color kind of around there that everybody's looking for. And again, we make no bones about, I've talked about this on the podcast, Doctor, that the George Floyd situation opened, at least a lot of people's eyes. There were, some companies that pacified towards the environment, right? They used it as an opportunity to try to built their brand off of this is we stand united, that sort of thing. And there's some that were legitimate towards that. But I think, as you go forward, for them to be able to, my point is for them to be able, these companies to be able to, start showing and demonstrating that in real life is encouraging, even, those at these companies to get into education. I'm thinking about some of the, the big companies and larger employers in this country to, is there some kind of way to help, drive, some of those folks into education, knowing how important that is. That's where their workforce comes from, right? Those kids that are sitting in classrooms now are their future workforce, right? And the future entrepreneurs. Right. And so how do we have this connection? I know that's been a never ending battle of private and public sector with that. Yes. And I get it. And there's a lot of bureaucracy, but I think what you talk about is very practical. And I think there's a way that even on a, more of a micro level, that more Black and brown men, Doctor, can be, encouraged and inspired to get involved with our youth and let the economics kind of works itself out as you dive into your passion and you find creative ways. I think it's a lot like how people start businesses. We talk about this a lot on the show. People scale back. Like some people will leave a job where they do very well, but it's just not fulfilling, right? And when you start your business, you're often starting from zero. You're not even starting with like a salary. At least as a teacher, you're getting a salary and maybe even some level of benefit. Yes. But people start businesses every day where they just go out on nothing but savings and go launch and do it. So if we can encourage more, again, more Black and brown men and also help them early enough so that their records allow them to be able to enter into the profession as well. Absolutely. I think one of the challenges we do have is Black and brown men with their with records and things like that, and how that can hinder them, even if they've got a authentic passion to get into teaching and get into educational administration. The background oftentimes becomes a roadblock, and so if there's also a way to be able to help those brothers be able to legal, morally, and ethically navigate that background, right, so that they can be resources and inspiration to these children, because we've got not just boys but even young ladies. They need to be able to see strong backbone men of color in those environments, right, and be able to see how that behavior is modeled and properly modeled. Sure. To hopefully supplement and maybe even augment what's going on at home. To your background, right, where you kind of had that in your house that provided that foundation. So,
right, Ron, because here's what my parents understood. There is no white person that would love me and educate me like my own parents, right? It is not their job. It is not a white person's job to increase my self-esteem and my love and Black joy. Yes. They don't know how to do that. They have no materials to do that. And if they really did it to fidelity, then what would happen, right? What would happen if you blew me up to feel good about my life, about my culture, about my people, to encourage me to be an entrepreneur, to make money, right? What would happen? I could possibly grow up and take over the world. Right. Is that what? Is that what you want? Wanted? No. Right. So I did that to spite them, in spite of what they did not give me. Right. Yes. So yes, I encourage African American men and people of color, men of color, to go into the teaching industry. They will not see themselves reflected in that industry. They should move forward anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And it requires that level of innovation. I mean, the same like many industries, right? Many industries we were not properly represented in,
Right.
and because of innovators, right? You think about even in sports. As much as we revere sports, many of this generation just weren't around for
Yeah.
when color barriers were broken and things like that.
Sure.
And you looked
Yep.
into the sports industry, and
Yep.
and not just on the field. You've got that piece, but even when you think of administration and ownership, I mean, we still have issues today in 2021 with the NFL and the NBA, and
Yes.
with black and brown head coaches and assistant coaches and
Yep.
general managers and owners, all across the board. We still have that issue today, even with everything that's out there. And so, I think that you're exactly right, Doctor, that encouraging, black and brown men to think creatively, think holistically, and, don't get into just the box of thinking of education as only, well, I've got to make this economic decision between the two different salaries, right? Look at it as an opportunity that, I can, get in and make a difference, and I can help innovate, education, and really tied in. So, oftentimes in the business community, I hear complaints, and I used to do this too. So I'm not capping. I used to do that too. That we argue about, well, this isn't taught in schools. We don't teach about credit. We don't teach about these life skills and things like that. And, I had to get to the point, and I think many people do, is that, well, let's go do it. You know what I mean? Like, and not be so concerned about just the red tape of it and that sort of thing, because with the flexibility of technology and different things like that, and having platforms, there's ways that we could easily be doing that and sharing that level of content and education. So that school is not just about reading Macbeth and, taking, standardized tests, right? There's so much more to
Sure.
amassing knowledge.
Sure. And I think, again, if people of color are looking to augment their salaries or come in at the top increment financially, they should think about being a specialist.
Yes.
So school specialists make the money, right?
Facts.
Learning specialists, math specialists, counselors, right?
Yeah.
Diagnosticians. These are the people who make the money.
Yes.
And of course, your degrees help to augment the salary as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I just got my message too, y'all, that I'm getting my book on March the 9th. Woo! Look at that. That's quick too. Why they gonna print that thing up quick? Boy, that you
I'm so grateful.
Dr. Slaughter got the white folks working.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
Got them working double time. They give me my book on Tuesday.
That's
today
great.
that was Saturday. So no, I love that. They got them on deck, ready to go. So again, I want to encourage the audience. I want to take this time to encourage everybody to go in the show notes and order Dr. Slaughter's book, Turning the Page, The Ultimate Guide for Teachers to Multicultural Literature. That'll be my reading material. For next week. So when y'all get done watching Coming to America and all the other stuff y'all gonna be looking at, y'all can dive into the book as well for additional content. Listen, as we, listen. Now I know you and I could probably sit and cut up all day. And today's Saturday, so I ain't trying to take up your whole Saturday and have you looking at me crazy when things start going down.
So wonderful, though. I really enjoy you.
Yeah, this has been very, when we talk about educational, this has been educational and helped me in being able to take notes and learn. And I hope, MYB, as you're listening, that, you're able to hear what Dr. Slaughter is saying, and really take that to heart and go back and encourage. So one of the things I always talk about is how do we, when people get done listening, right, what do you go do? And, I want to ask that of Dr. Slaughter, but I want to share that, listen to this and go back and encourage, that young boy that you see that you drive by, right? Instead of just driving by him, stop and get to know him, say hello to him. When you see, just in your neighborhoods, right? Start encouraging, the men, ask them about, education, maybe have them speak with, the school principal, go to the PTO meetings, get a chance to get around the environment, and think of it from an entrepreneurial mindset. Just like you're looking at other businesses, look at education from the entrepreneurial mindset as well. That
Correct.
there's, entrepreneurs are about solving problems, right? Identify a problem, solve it, and get paid for solving it. And the bigger that problem is, the more you'll get paid, right? It works in education as well. So, Doctor, I'd love to get your kind of closing thoughts on kind of that point, and also kind of, what for your success, what are, one or two things that are kind of principles for you that you think will help other people as they go along to help them be successful?
I would say look at school as a guide. It's not the be all and end all of your education. Become self-educated, self-motivated. Do not allow the teacher, and I'm speaking to parents as well, do not allow the teacher to be the sage on the stage and the authority over your child's life. Because teachers are amazing people, but they are not responsible for every aspect of your child's life. The next idea that I would want to leave the public with is this. The more you read, the more you know. Right? So if you're able to collect your books and create a home library for yourself, for your children, that's a legacy to leave to your family, right? And the third piece of advice or idea I'd like to leave to the public is show up at the schools. Be a part of the schools. Talk to the teacher, not adversarially. Be an ally to the teacher. Yes. You and the teacher can work together. It's very common for there to be an intercultural relationship. So again, 82 or 87% teaching population is white. White teachers talking to people of color can be adversarial sometimes. Do not allow that to be the case, because when that becomes the case, the parent is easily written off, and so is the child. Don't fall into that trap.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are tremendous points for, whether you're a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver, or maybe your children have already grown up and gone through school, but you're still a supporter of your local school. Sure. And even if that's the case, get involved with your school, even if it's been years since your kids have been involved, or maybe you've been involved. The school, your local school, could still use your insight, your leadership, and your support. And so, continue to do that. As well. And so those are tremendous points, Doctor. Thank you for those. And, Dr. R.A. Slaughter is a guest today here on episode number 253 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Again, I'm going to say it for the third time, for the folk in the back. All right. Go in the show notes, order the book. Okay. They know I cut up with them. I got to get on them a little bit, Doctor, because they get a little hard headed sometimes. So you got to say it a few times. We talk about education. Sometimes, sometimes you got to get on these folks. Because if I post go get a free cheeseburger, they gonna run down there.
Right.
They'll show me that, but I tell them about a book. All right. So listen, order the book. All right. I have already done so. And I've already got my estimated delivery, all that stuff. I'm all taken care of. And so I look forward to getting the book and reading it, right? Don't just order it just to spend the money. Definitely support Dr. Slaughter, but, read the book. She wrote it so you can read it, right? And so you can gain, from her perspective, many of the things that we're talking about today. And so, Doctor, I want to have you back on.
Thank you.
At some point here in the future when your schedule opens up, so we can, dig into some more of the book, kind of share with this audience, and beyond, just more of your perspective that I think is very unique, that helps us all. And then I'm going to be screaming this drum with you and Olivia is that it's going to be time for your podcast here at some point, because I think you'd be a tremendous podcaster, and I think your reach would be, profound. Awesome. And I think that you could, really add to the flavor of what you do, kind of in this podcasting realm. So don't get shy on me if you get a message from me like, hey, we need to, Doctor, we need to get the podcast. We need to get the podcast going. That'd be a great way to go with your book. And as you write future books, the podcast becomes a nice supplement for people to, to kind of get involved and interact with you. So definitely looking towards that. But Blessings to you and your family, Doctor.
Thank you.
This has been, an honor to have this conversation, and to meet you, albeit virtually, to be able to connect. And so thank you so much for what you do. We appreciate you, and your 30 years plus of educating and really helping engage our communities and help us be just a little bit better. I know that education is a very thankless job, right? There's not a lot of sexy components to it behind the scenes, and there's a lot of frustration, like you say, dealing with knucklehead parents and knucklehead administrators. And I've used that head knucklehead, so I don't cuss, but but you got folk that you got to deal with, right? And that can impede that process. And so, for you and other educators all the way around who look to help edify our communities, at least from me, thank you, for that. And so look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. Have a great afternoon.
Yep, absolutely. You too, Doctor. We'll take care, and we'll be in touch for sure. So that was Dr. R.A. Slaughter, our guest today here on episode 253. So listen, NYB, make sure you connect with her. Again, purchase the book, Turning the Page, The Ultimate Guide for Teachers to Multicultural Literature. So thank you again. Special thanks to Olivia Almagro at O Plus Media Group LLC. Go to O Plus, the letter O, plus PLUS, mediagroup.com, and connect with Olivia. She's a tremendous support. You can go back and check her out. She joined me on episode number 100 of the podcast, where her and I got a chance to cut up a little bit. And, she connects me with tremendous folks like Dr. Slaughter. So I really appreciate her. Connect with her. If she could be a resource to you in your public relations needs, definitely connect with Olivia and support her business by paying her and having her, conduct services for you and put together and customize solutions for you. Okay. Listen, this has been episode number 253. Thank y'all so much for your listening ear. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing the podcast. Continue to send me feedback, Ron at themybpodcast.com. I'd love to hear the good, bad, and ugly, how we can be a little better, or what you think is tremendous and great that you want us to keep doing. Definitely want to hear that feedback from you. 3 things that unite us. I say this after every episode, and I'm going to keep saying it until we do it. 3 things that unite us, no matter where we're from, no matter what side of the tracks. We all want to be a little bit better for ourselves, a little bit better for our families, and a little bit better for our communities. Those 3 areas. We all have that in common, right? When we talk about multiculturalism, we all have that in common, right? And so if we remember that as we meet people from various cultures and various walks of life, people who we may not agree politically, we may not agree socially, whatever it is, or maybe we do agree, whatever it is, just keep that in mind that, we all have that same pursuit. And I think if we do keep that in mind and remember it and act on that as we engage each other, we can all collectively make this place just a little bit better. Champer on the Minding Your Business podcast.